My mother's funeral smelled like lilies and old lies. I stood beside the closed casket rehearsing the story everyone expected me to believe: sudden cardiac arrest, a peaceful passing, the end of a complicated woman. Then I saw it, her ring. The emerald with the hairline crack that only I knew about, glinting on my Aunt Helena's hand. When I asked about it, she smiled as if I were a child miscounting marbles and told me Mother had willed it to her. I swallowed the suspicion and kept up appearances until my phone vibrated. A text from my brother, Lucas, who was supposedly flying in late. 4 words: she's not dead. Run, the message ripped a seam in reality. I began to notice the choreography around me: the distracted priest, Helena fielding hushed calls, our family lawyer lingering near the exit with a folder he wouldn't put down. Shards of memory cut through: Mother teaching me to bluff at cards, to never show both fear and truth at once, the secret bank envelope she hid in the dictionary, the night she said, if anything happens to me, look for what's missing, not what's left. As condolences piled up, I realized the casket's weight had felt wrong when the pallbearers shifted it lighter. Stage prop wrong. Lucas's next message told me to stall, to stay where people could see me, to avoid being lured anywhere private. He claimed Mother had faked her death to escape someone close, someone with keys to our lives. He promised proof, but he also warned that our phones might be watched. Meanwhile, Helena tightened her grip on the ring and the narrative, pressing me to sign some routine acknowledgments with the lawyer, documents that would immediately settle debts and transfer assets. My mother's estate, they hinted, was a fire I could help put out if I signed now. I began to speak at the podium, using my eulogy to inventory the room, to test faces with names: a banker who once refused my mother a loan, a neighbor who knew everyone's secrets, my ex who shouldn't have known the time or place. I stalled with stories while I searched for patterns. Every laugh line bought me seconds. Every pause trained the spotlight on Helena's hand. As the day unraveled, so did my loyalty to the acceptable version of grief. I would have to decide who to trust, whether to open the casket, whether to walk out and leave the past to burn. But something told me the past was already waiting for me outside, engine running. If Mother was alive, she wanted me to find her. If she wasn't, someone wanted me to believe she was. Either way, this funeral was a trap, and I was done pretending not to see the teeth. The church smelled faintly of damp stone and lilies, the kind of smell that clings to your skin long after you've left. I stood near the casket, nodding politely, as distant relatives clutched my hands and whispered their rehearsed condolences. They thought I was too grief-stricken to speak much. In truth, I was too busy watching. It happened in a blink. Aunt Helena reached up to adjust her black lace veil, and a flash of green caught my eye. The emerald ring. My mother's ring. The same one she wore to every family gathering, the one with the tiny hairline crack along the stone's edge. I knew that ring like I knew the scar on my own wrist. I froze. My mother never took it off. Not for showers, not for hospital stays. Not even when she baked bread and the dough clung to it. It's a shield, she once told me, and a reminder that even shields can break. I heard myself asking, "Where did you get that?" Helena looked at me as if I'd asked why the sun rises. Her smile was small but sharp. "Your mother willed it to me. She wanted me to have it." Her words slid over me like cold water, and for a moment I almost believed them. Almost. But there was something rehearsed about the way she said it, as if she'd practiced in the mirror. Before I could push further, the priest called everyone to their seats. I sat in the second pew, my hands gripping the folded funeral program, trying to convince myself it didn't matter. People passed down jewelry all the time. But in my mother's world, nothing was just anything. Every item had a purpose, a weight, a secret. The casket was closed. That had been her wish, according to Helena. No one questioned it, except me. And then my phone buzzed. I slipped it from my pocket beneath the cover of the program. A message from Lucas. My brother. 4 words that hollowed me out. She's not dead. Run. The first thought that hit me wasn't disbelief. It was relief. Relief so sharp it hurt. Then came the rush of questions, tangled and choking. If she wasn't dead, why the funeral? Why the ring on Helena's hand? Who was I supposed to be running from? I turned my head slowly, scanning the faces in the church. Helena was watching me now, not with grief, but with calculation. The family. Lawyer sat near the aisle, a thick folder on his lap, tapping it with his finger as though keeping time with some invisible clock. Lucas's message glowed on my screen. I typed back, "Where is she?" No reply. My thumb hovered over his name when another message appeared, "Don't leave alone. Don't let them take you." The priest began his sermon, his voice droning about loss and acceptance. My mind was far from acceptance. I stared at the casket, at its perfect sheen, and thought about how light it had felt when the pallbearers shifted it earlier. Not heavy enough to hold a body. Not heavy enough to hold my mother. I thought I saw movement in the corner. Helena. Leaning toward the lawyer, whispering. The lawyer nodded, eyes flicking toward me. And just then, Lucas's final message came through, "Stall. I'm coming." I folded the program in half and forced a smile, because suddenly I knew, whatever was happening here, my mother wasn't the only one in danger. And if I played this wrong, neither of us would leave this day alive. When the priest invited anyone to speak, I stood before I could think better of it. My knees wobbled, but the microphone steadied me with its cool metal certainty. I wasn't there to say goodbye, I was there to buy time. I drew a breath and told a story I'd never said aloud. The night my mother taught me to lie with a straight back, she said grief is a theater without a stage. I began, hearing my voice echo up into the stone ribs of the church. And that sometimes, to survive, you have to play every part at once. Heads tilted. Helena crossed her legs and made the ring flash again, as if to remind me who held the props, stretched the story like taffy. I described the way my mother cut lemons, how she hummed under her breath when she hid things in plain sight, how she taught me to shuffle cards without dropping a single one. Every detail was a clock with a slow hand. Lucas had told me to stall, so I did, but it wasn't just for him anymore. I needed the room to show me its tells. From the podium I could see the lawyer's folder label, smeared with fingerprint grease, and the way he kept checking the side door near the sacristy. A man from the bank sat rigidly, pretending to be moved. A neighbor dabbed her eyes and peeked at her smartwatch. People grieve, yes, but grief usually breathes. This grief was being managed. Another vibration in my pocket. I didn't pull the phone out, I simply slid the program up enough to angle the screen. A new message from Lucas, "Don't sign anything. If Helena corners you, pretend to faint or start crying, but don't go somewhere private. Mom is not with them, not with them." So she was with someone else. Or alone. A knot formed under my sternum and pulled my voice tight, making it tremble in a way that earned me sympathetic looks and bought me more moments. I held the silence like a match I didn't dare blow out. "I keep thinking about her ring," I said, pivoting, and for the first time Helena's eyes sharpened. "That emerald with the hairline crack." She said the crack proved survival isn't pretty. I let my gaze fall to Helena's hand. "It looks beautiful on you, Aunt." Her mouth twitched. She lifted the hand as if admiring it for the first time. "Your mother insisted," she said, projecting, performing. She wanted me to remember her strength. Of course. I smiled as if warmed by the thought. But I remembered the way the ring used to stick on my mother's finger, how she'd twist it when she was thinking. The ring now sat tight on Helena's hand, yet faint reddish impressions ringed her skin, fresh marks where a jeweler might have forced a size that didn't fit. The emerald's crack lined up exactly with a tiny nick on the band that only I knew. It wasn't a replica. It was the ring. Which meant the ring had been removed while my mother breathed, or Helena had been there when it was taken. Both choices bruised the inside of my mouth. The priest shifted, hoping I would land the plane. Instead, I taxied the runway and circled. I told them about how my mother turned lessons into games. If anything happens to me, I quoted, look for what's missing, not what's left. I let the words hang. The casket behind me was what was left. What was missing? The weight. The weight was wrong. I felt reckless. It was the kind of recklessness that smells like gasoline. I stepped back from the microphone as if closing my eulogy, then turned to face the casket as though offering a final private moment. The church pianist began a soft hymn, a lull meant to shepherd me off stage. I laid my palm on the casket's lid. The wood was cool, the finish too smooth. I knocked lightly with my knuckles, a small hollow sound that made the lawyer flinch. I'm not ready, I murmured, projecting just enough to be heard by the first row. I need to see her. No, Helena said. Not loudly, but it cut through the hymn like a wire through paper. She didn't want a viewing. I'm her daughter. I kept my hand on the casket. I'll carry the consequence. The lawyer was already rising, smoothing his tie, hefting the folder. He approached with a contrite smile that didn't reach his eyes. There are considerations, he said softly. And it would be better to handle certain documents before we deviate from her wishes. Better for whom? I asked. The microphone was still live. His smile became a warning. Helena stood. We can step into the vestry and speak privately. Every cell in my body remembered Lucas's text. Don't leave alone. Don't let them take you. I shook my head gently, as though refusing tears. I'd rather say what I need to say here. A whisper gusted through the pews. The pianist faltered, then recovered. The priest stitched his face into a pastoral smile and tried to usher me aside, but I didn't move. The hollow space inside. The casket throbbed under my palm like a thought I couldn't unthink. My phone buzzed again. This time I answered without looking, as if comforting myself with the program. A photo arrived. Not of my mother. Of the church, apparently taken from outside through the stained glass window. The angle captured me with my hand on the casket. Helena halfway to the aisle, the lawyer hovering. A second message, good. Keep them where you can see them. I'm close. 2 minutes. 2 minutes can be the longest unit of time. I slid my fingers to the casket's latch. It was screwed shut. But not fully, someone had rushed a job. The tiniest give teased under the metal. I imagined the casket opening, imagined everyone's horror, imagined the truth snapping the room in half. The priest stepped closer. Daughter, he said, grief confuses, grief clarifies, I said, and lifted the latch. Helena lunged. She gripped my wrist with surprising strength, her nails biting crescents into my skin. For a second the mask slipped and I saw something like panic, then she smoothed it over with a doe-eyed plea. Please. Respect your mother. You first, I said, my voice low. Where did you get the ring? She opened her mouth, but the answer was swallowed by a sound from inside the casket. Not a thud. Not a breath. A faint vibration, mechanical. And unmistakable. A phone, buzzing against wood. The hymn died on a wrong note. Every head turned as if pulled by a single string. The lawyer whispered, that's impossible, and then realized he'd said it out loud. I felt the vibration. Through the lid, a tiny insect of movement under my palm. My throat closed. If a phone was inside, then either someone had dropped it in by mistake or someone wanted me to open this box in front of witnesses. Either way, a truth was tapping to be let out. I looked at Helena. She had gone still, the ring cold and loud on her hand. For the first time all day she looked afraid of something she couldn't manage. Over her shoulder I saw the side door crack open an inch, then close again, as if the building itself were blinking. The vibration stopped. Silence filled the nave, thick as velvet. Then my phone lit in my lap with an incoming call from an unknown number. The ringtone was a melody I hadn't heard since childhood, a tune my mother hummed when she baked bread and hid things where no one thought to look. I didn't answer. I put the call on speaker, set the phone on the casket, and let the sound spill into the church. The voice that came through was distorted, low, wrapped in static. But the cadence, the rhythm, the breath between words, I knew them like the line of that emerald crack. Don't let them close it again, the voice said. And don't trust the will. The line went dead. The casket buzzed once more, then fell silent. The air in the church changed. It wasn't just quiet, it was taut, a rope pulled so tight you could hear the fibers strain. My fingers were still on the casket's latch, but I didn't open it. Not yet. I wanted to, needed to, but the voice, my mother's voice, had left more than words behind. It had left a trap. Helena's grip on my wrist loosened, just slightly, enough for me to pull away. Her face had gone pale, the kind of pale that belongs to people caught in a lie they weren't ready to defend. The lawyer closed his folder slowly, as if every second of delay bought him safety. I knew better. Whatever was happening here, time wasn't on my side. I stepped back, keeping my body between the casket and the side door. There's a phone in there, I said loud enough for the whole room to hear. And someone just called me from it. Murmurs broke out instantly, like a match to dry grass. The banker shifted uncomfortably, the neighbor clutched her handbag tighter. The priest tried to calm the noise, urging everyone to remember the sanctity of the moment. But I had no interest in sanctity. I was interested in leverage. If I opened the casket in front of everyone, I might expose the truth, or I might hand whoever was behind this the perfect excuse to drag me away under the guise of hysteria. Lucas's earlier message screamed in my head, "Don't leave alone. Don't sign anything. Mom is not with them." So where was she? And who exactly was them? Helena tried a different tactic now, softening her voice, reaching for me as though she could erase the last 10 minutes with a hug. "Sweetheart, grief is twisting what you hear. Let's go somewhere quiet." No, I cut her off with a tone that carried through the nave. "We stay here. All of us." I made sure to look at the lawyer when I said it. His lips pressed into a line so thin it nearly disappeared. My phone buzzed again, another text from Lucas, outside. 2 minutes. "Don't touch the casket until I'm there." The problem was, the priest had started moving toward it, muttering about securing the remains. The remains. That phrase stuck in my throat. He wasn't protecting my mother, he was protecting the box. I said don't, I snapped, stepping forward. Something in my voice made him freeze. I looked at the casket again, thinking of the weight. Pallbearers had carried it like a prop. I'd felt that wrongness in my bones. A body should have made the lid sag with its silence. But this had floated too easily. I knocked again, deliberately. The hollow thud came back at me, and this time the banker flinched too. Everyone here knew something they weren't saying. The lawyer broke the silence. "There are legal protocols," he said, stepping closer. "You can't just open it?" I interrupted. "Because it's empty?" That lit the fuse. The whispers turned into sharp, audible exchanges. The neighbor muttered something about seeing Helena at my mother's house the night before she died. The banker asked if there'd been an autopsy. The priest tried to shout over them, but his voice drowned in the current. Helena was no longer pale. She was flushed, breathing faster, her hand flexing like she was deciding whether to snatch the phone from the casket. "You don't understand," she said, her voice cracking just enough to sound rehearsed. "There are people." The side door opened again, wider this time, and a sliver of daylight cut through the dim. A figure stepped halfway inside, silhouetted, holding something small and dark. My pulse rocketed. It was Lucas. He didn't move toward me right away. Instead, he scanned the room like a soldier counting enemies, then fixed his gaze on the casket. "Don't open it," he called. "Not here." "Why?" My voice was sharper than I meant, because if you do, you'll never get her back. The room erupted. Half the attendees turned toward him, the other half toward me. The lawyer began gathering his papers in a rush. Helena started toward Lucas, but he sidestepped, keeping the small object in his hand hidden from view, out the front. Now, he said to me, never breaking eye contact, what's in there, Lucas? I demanded, not Mom, he said, and his voice dropped just enough for only me to hear the rest. And not something you want the cameras to see. I glanced around. For the first time, I noticed phones raised, strangers recording, the red eyes of devices catching everything. If I opened that casket now, the entire world might see, whatever it was. Before I had any control over the story, Lucas gave the smallest shake of his head, his eyes pleading. Trust me. Please. Helena moved between us, her body an iron gate. You're not taking her anywhere, she hissed at him. Lucas's answer was a single word, heavy as a verdict, watch me. And then, somewhere behind me, the casket buzzed again. Only this time, it didn't stop, the buzzing wouldn't stop. It crawled through the wood like a trapped insect, a sound that belonged to something alive, not a monument to the dead. Lucas held my gaze from the side door and gave a tiny nod that meant move now. I didn't think, I performed. I let my knees soften, my shoulders fold, my breath hitch. The audience saw a mourning daughter crack. Gasps rose, chairs scraped. The priest and 2 attendants hurried forward. In the confusion, Lucas slipped inside, and together we steered the casket off the center aisle as if we were simply granting me privacy. Helena shouted for decorum. The lawyer shouted for procedure. Grief made a useful fog, pushed the casket through a swinging door into a narrow corridor that smelled of bleach and flowers losing their war. The funeral director met us halfway, palms up, apologetic and obstructive all at once. Family. Only, he said, I am the family, I snapped, then softer, and so is he. The buzzing under my hands turned into a metronome for panic. Lucas flashed the small object he'd been guarding, a thin socket wrench wrapped in black tape, the kind used for casket screws. Give us 2 minutes, he told the director. If you keep that door closed, we'll make sure you don't end up on anyone's video. Something in his voice, exhaustion braided with authority, made the man waver. He closed the door. Lucas went to work on the screws with quick, economical turns. Beneath the polished veneer, the mechanism was tired and human. I counted each tiny clink as if they were seconds shaved from danger. Why not open it out there? I whispered, because they needed you to, he said, not looking up. Whatever's inside is meant to detonate your reputation. Cameras were part of the design. He lifted the lid. It came up easier than any lid with a body beneath it should. A second, thinner lid sat under the first, a plywood false top screwed in on the quick. The buzz grew louder, definite now, a phone rattling against wood. Lucas slid the wrench into my palm. Hold the lid and watch the door. I watched. Every shadow looked like a hand. Every hand looked like Helena's. Lucas worked the smaller screws, jaw tight. Sweat beaded at his temple and rolled. I had the irrational urge to catch it before it hit the satin. When the last screw clattered, he pried the false panel up and set it aside. The smell that rose wasn't death. It was glue and fresh-cut wood and the faint metallic ghost of cheap electronics. Inside the cavity lay a burner phone duct-taped to the satin, vibrating like a trapped bird. Next to it, a thick, rubber-banded envelope, a flat bronze key with a stamped number, and a small voice recorder with a cracked casing. At the far end, tucked into a crease like a hidden tongue, sat my mother's passport and a hospital bracelet looped into it with a safety pin. I stared at the bracelet. White plastic, black letters. Patient, Teresa Duarte. Admit, 1 day after her official date of death. My mouth filled with copper and questions. Lucas tore the phone free and thumbed the green button. It stopped vibrating and played a message. Immediately, no greeting, no chance to choose. If you're hearing this, you opened the box where you could still think, my mother's voice said, low and precise, a voice I'd grown up obeying and resenting in equal measure. Good. The will you've been shown is not mine. The codicil is bait. If Helena has the ring, she's already chosen the side that pays faster. Do not sign. Do not return home. Storage. Box 314. Key enclosed. If someone tries to separate you and your brother, let them separate you and the building instead. Lucas and I looked at each other. Separating us and the building sounded like a fire alarm. It sounded like a crowd in the street where cameras could be useful to us, not to them. He handed me the key. The stamped number matched my mother's. Crisp tone, 314. The envelope whispered against my fingers when I lifted it. Inside, stacks of cash, smaller than fear makes them but more than enough to buy time. Receipts. Photocopies of ledgers with the banker's signature next to deposits. In Helena's maiden name. A photograph of the lawyer and the banker in a bar, shoulder to shoulder like brothers. On the back, a line in my mother's familiar, slanted hand, if they swear they hated each other, ask what they drank together. The recorder crackled to life on its own, as if a timer had been set. If you have to choose a door, pick the one. That isn't polite, my mother said. And if a man says he's doing the Lord's work with a folder in his hand, ask him why his fingers smell like toner and money. Pounding hit the corridor door. The funeral director's anxious voice broke through. They want in, he hissed. They're saying you're desecrating. Not desecrating, Lucas called. Just deciding. To me, he said, we need to move. Now. I tucked the passport and bracelet into my jacket. The bracelet's plastic bit my skin like a promise. Lucas reseated the false panel, leaving the cavity empty but for the impression it had made. He didn't bother with all the screws. The point wasn't neatness. It was speed. We rolled the casket back toward the door. Lucas nodded at the red rectangle on the wall. Separate us and the building, he said, and yanked the fire alarm. The world inside the funeral home dissolved into noise and water. Alarms howled. Sprinklers stuttered to life, spitting cold needles into the air. The corridor door flew open. Helena surged in, wet and furious, the ring glinting like an accusation. Behind her, the lawyer clung to his folder like a life raft. People poured into the hallway, coughing, filming, crying. Steam rose from grief in real time. Thieves, Helena screeched, trying to grab the envelope now hidden under my coat. They're stealing from the dead. Then open the casket, I shot back. Let everyone see what you buried. Something rippled across her face as fear, calculation, a brief inventory of her alibis. She didn't touch the lid. The lawyer stepped in instead, his voice oiled for persuasion. You're in shock, he said to me. Let's get you outside. You can sign a temporary authorization to give you what you want, I said. You always did prefer the shortest paperwork. A hush fluttered over the chaos as if the alarm itself paused to listen. The banker appeared at the end of the hall, wet hair pasted to his forehead, eyes landing on the envelope bulge like a homing device. The neighbor's mascara ran like ink. The priest lifted both hands as if blessing a battlefield. The funeral director looked like a man who'd chosen the wrong war to referee, and why phone lit with a new message from an unknown number. If you can read this, you're out of time. I didn't answer. The burner in my hand, my mother's phone. Now mine, vibrated again, but not with a recording. The screen showed a map, a single blue dot labeled Moem. It pulsed once, twice, then began to move. Where is it? Lucas asked, peering over my shoulder. Here, I said, and felt my stomach drop. The dot was inside the building. Not across town, not at a storage facility, not in some safe house with bread in the oven. Inside. On our floor. Coming closer. Corridor 2B. Helena saw the map and went very still. For a second, the ring on her hand seemed to weigh her arm down. Give me that, she said, but there was no authority left in her voice. There was only fear. A shape passed across the end of the hall, too quick to register more than motion. The blue dot jumped forward. Sprinklers hissed. The alarm wailed like a living thing. Lucas grabbed my elbow. Back, he said. Now. We rolled the casket away from the door, deeper into the corridor, toward a service room with a metal table and a humming refrigerator. The dot kept coming, sliding toward us as if drawn on a string. I thought of my mother teaching me to bluff. To hold eye contact while lying. I thought of her ring, now choking a different finger. I thought of her voice saying pick the impolite door. The service room had one. An exit with a battered bar and a sign that begged us not to. Lucas shoved it with his shoulder. It gave an inch, then another. The alarm's pitch changed to a keening. That set my teeth on edge. Behind us, footsteps pounded. Voices overlapped. Filming, filming, always filming, the burner chimed, a bright domestic sound absurd in the spray and sirens. The label on the screen changed from MOM to LEV. A call slashed across the glass. I answered. For a heartbeat, there was only static and water. Then my mother's breath, close enough to fog the inside of my skull. If you can hear me, she said, you have to choose now. Left will cost you money. Right will cost you blood. Where are you? I asked, the question tearing out of me. Are you inside? Yes, she said, and her voice broke on the word. Closer than you think. The door behind us rattled. The metal handle turned. The blue dot was right on our side of the wall. I lifted my head, the phone slick in my hand, and stared at the knob as it began to twist. The handle turned slowly, deliberately, as if whoever was on the other side wanted me to hear every scrape of the metal. Lucas stepped between me and the door, the wrench raised in his fist, but I stayed close enough to see the burner's screen. The blue dot wasn't moving anymore. It was right here. Inches away, left or right, my mother's voice had said. Money or blood. The door jerked once, then stilled. Silence, except for the alarm and sprinklers outside. Lucas glanced at me. I nodded toward the service exit, the impolite door my mother had told me to choose, but my feet wouldn't move. Something in my chest wanted to see who was on the other side first. Maybe it was morbid curiosity, maybe it was the part of me that had lived under my mother's rules long enough to want answers before escape. The handle turned again, faster now. The hinges groaned. A thin line of light opened, and I saw an eye. Through the gap. It was the same deep hazel I'd grown up staring into across kitchen tables. My breath caught, the wrench in Lucas's hand dropping an inch, then the door swung wide, and she was there. My mother. Alive. Wet from the sprinklers, hair flattened against her skull, but unmistakably her. She wore a hospital gown under an oversized black coat. Her bare feet left prints on the tile. In one hand she clutched a folder identical to the lawyer's, in the other, a small duffel bag. I stepped forward. She stepped back. No time, she said. They'll notice I'm gone. Lucas's voice cracked. We thought you were, I know. She cut him off sharply. And that's why you're both still breathing. Her gaze landed on the envelope under my coat. Good. You found it. Why the funeral? I demanded. Why all of this? Her eyes softened for half a second, then hardened again. Because sometimes disappearing is safer than proving you're alive. And because I needed them all in one place. She glanced toward the corridor. They're watching the front exits. That door, she pointed to the service exit, takes us to the alley. There's a car. But once we open it, they'll come running. What's in the bag? Lucas asked. Leverage, she said simply, then to me, you'll see when we're safe. Now choose. The pounding started then, on the corridor door, on the walls, voices shouting our names like they owned them. I heard Helena's sharp tone cutting through the chaos, the lawyer barking orders. They'll follow, I said. They can try, my mother replied, shifting the duffel to her shoulder. But if they get me, everything in that bag disappears, and with it your future. The alarms wailed. Water pooled around our ankles. Lucas looked at me. Left for money, right for blood, he said. She meant them. I gripped the service door bar. My mother's eyes locked on mine. Once it's open, there's no going back, she warned. I pushed. Cold air knifed in, heavy with the smell of rain and exhaust. A narrow alley stretched ahead, a black SUV idling at the far end. The driver's face was shadowed. Go, my mother urged. She and Lucas moved. First, their feet splashing through puddles. I followed, but halfway down the alley I glanced back. In the doorway stood Helena, soaked, hair wild, the emerald ring gleaming under the security light. She wasn't chasing us. She was smiling. That smile stayed with me until the SUV's doors slammed and the tires screamed against wet asphalt. We didn't speak until we'd made 3 sharp turns and the city blurred into warehouses. My mother finally opened the duffel. Inside were files, photographs, and a hard drive. I saw the banker's name, the lawyers, the funeral directors. I saw transactions, dates, amounts. I saw my own name in some of them. This is why they wanted me gone, she said. And why they'll keep coming. Lucas asked the question I was too tired to form. So what now? My mother looked at both of us. Now you decide if we run, or if we burn them alive with the truth. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Not the burner, my own. One new message, no number, just the words, she's not who you think she is. And for the first time since the funeral began, I wasn't sure which woman they meant.